I began cooking before the sun came up. Christmas dinners had followed the same rhythm in this house for nearly 30 years. Coffee first. Then, the turkey in the oven, while the kitchen was still quiet and the windows were still dark with winter. By 7 in the morning the counters were already full. Potatoes cooling in a bowl of water, pie crust resting beneath a cloth, spices lined up like small soldiers waiting for their turn. No one else in the house was awake yet. That part had always been my favorite. For a few hours, the holiday belonged to the work itself. The slow smell of roasting meat, the soft scrape of knives on cutting boards, the low hum of the oven warming the kitchen. My mother had done the same thing when I was a girl. She believed meals like this carried something forward, not just food, but the feeling that a family could gather in the same place year after year and recognize itself. By noon, the house had begun to wake up. My son arrived first, carrying 2 bottles of wine. Behind him came his wife, Melissa, wrapped in a long cream-colored coat that looked far too delicate for the snow outside. Melissa had never disliked me. That wasn't the problem. But over the years she had developed a quiet way of reorganizing things. The first Christmas after their wedding, she had suggested new centerpieces for the dining table. The next year, she brought different serving platters, explaining they photographed better. Little adjustments. Always polite. Always presented as improvements. I had never argued. It seemed easier to let the small things pass. By late afternoon the house was warm with people and noise. Coats piled near the front door. Laughter moving through the living room. The smell of cinnamon and roasted vegetables drifting from the kitchen. I had been cooking for nearly 13 hours by the time the turkey finally came out of the oven. My back ached in the quiet way it always did after long days on my feet. Still, I felt the familiar satisfaction of seeing everything come together. The table looked beautiful. Candles lit. Plates arranged. The serving dishes carefully placed where everyone could reach them. I carried the last bowl, green beans with garlic, and set it gently beside the turkey. That was when I heard Melissa's voice behind me. She was speaking softly to someone near the doorway. Though she didn't realize I was close enough to hear. Maybe it would be easier if she just ate in the basement kitchen, she said calmly. There's more room for everyone up here. For a moment I didn't move. The spoon was still in my hand. At first my mind tried to rearrange the sentence into something else. Perhaps I misunderstood. Perhaps she was talking about someone else. But the quiet tone of the conversation made it clear. She was talking about me, after 13 hours in the kitchen. In my house, the strange thing about moments like that is how silent they become. No shouting. No dramatic scene. Just a stillness that settles around the words once they've been spoken. I stood there for several seconds, staring at the steam rising from the bowl in front of me. Then I set the spoon down. I untied my apron slowly and folded it once before placing it on the counter. My hands felt steady. That surprised me. When I stepped into the dining room, no one noticed anything unusual at first. Guests were already finding their chairs. Someone was pouring wine. Melissa was adjusting one of the candles in the center of the table. I walked past the empty seats. Past the side chairs that had been added to fit more people. Until I reached the head of the table. The chair there had been mine since we bought the house. For a moment I simply rested my hands on the back of it. Conversation in the room began to fade as people noticed where I was standing. I think there's been a small misunderstanding, I said. My voice came out calm, almost conversational. I've been cooking since before sunrise today. No one interrupted. This dinner, I continued, was prepared here, in this house, by me. Across the table Melissa looked up slowly. I thought it might be easier if, she began. I lifted a hand gently, not sharply, just enough to pause the explanation. There's no need to make it easier, I said. I pulled the chair back and sat down. The sound of the chair legs sliding across the floor echoed louder than it should have. For several seconds no one spoke. Then I reached forward and lifted the carving knife. "Let's eat while everything's still warm." My son was the first to move. He stood quietly and shifted his chair closer to mine before sitting again. He didn't say anything, but the gesture didn't go unnoticed. Around the table, guests began reaching for serving dishes again, though the room felt different now. Melissa remained silent for a long moment. Finally she adjusted her napkin and sat back in her chair. Dinner resumed. People spoke carefully at first, then gradually more normally. Glasses clinked, plates were passed around. The food tasted exactly the way it always had. But the room had changed. Not dramatically, just enough that everyone understood something new about the house they were sitting in. No one suggested the basement again. And for the rest of the evening, I remained exactly where I belonged. At the head of my own table.